Hey everyone, I hope you're doing good. We're in Genesis 33 this week, and we are finally to the place where there's going to be a reconciliation. This long journey that we've been on, this ever since Jacob and Esau had the run in with the birthright and with their father's blessing, and they left each other, and their relationship went sour, and they haven't seen each other. We are finally to the point where they're going to meet back up, and you're asking yourself, you're on edge, asking yourself what's going to happen. What Jacob's fearful that he's bringing 400 men with him, and he's going to try to take him out and fight, and they're going to have to fight. And Jacob's been splitting up all of his camp to, if he takes this one out, then this one will still be able to. And so there's so much fear, there's so much anxiety, there's so much wonder what's going to happen in this. And then finally in Genesis 33, we see the conclusion of their relationship and what ends up happening. And it says that Jacob looked up, saw Esau coming with 400 men, right? So he's still thinking, this guy's going to take me out. So what did he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two slave women. He put the slaves and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. You see this favoritism that we've been talking about still plaguing this family even to this day, right? And so he splits them up and puts some in front of the others. And not only that, he's still obviously scared of what's going to happen. But it says this: but Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And then they wept. You see, Jacob and all his people are like bowing down to Esau, trying to get him. They want his forgiveness. They desire reconciliation. But what does Esau do? This brings to mind the parable of the prodigal son, right? When he sees his son far away, he runs and he hugs him and he kisses him and he throws his arm around him and he cries on him, right? This is what Esau does when he sees Jacob. He knows that we're brothers, and I want to be reconciled to you. I forgive you. Everything is going to be okay. I mean, this is beautiful reconciliation moment between Jacob and Esau, and Esau's taking the kind of the first go at this, and says, hey, we're still family, right? The way that he interacts with them is a familial type of greeting. We are still family no matter what has happened. And so Esau asked him about who's with him. And I love the way that Jacob answers this question in verse 5. He says this, he asked him, who are these people with him? And he said, these are the children that God has graciously given your servant. And then down in verse 11, he says, please take my present that was brought to you, because God has been gracious to me and I have everything I need. Do you see the shift that's happened in Jacob's life? He understands now that it wasn't because of his skill. It wasn't because of his gifting. It wasn't because of his deception and his scheming that all of these things have happened, that he has these kids and he has these livestock and he's been prosperous. No, he understands now, after his encounter with God, that it is God that has blessed him with all of these things. It is God that is the reason why he has all of these things and is prospered. It is God that has blessed him. And I think this is so important because in order for Jacob to really have full reconciliation with Esau, you know who he had to reconcile with first? Is God. Because you see, we can't have the peace of God until we have peace with God first. And it's when we have peace with God that we then have the peace of God internally, and then we can experience peace horizontally with other people on this earth. And this is what happens with Jacob. He gets reconciled to God. He has peace with God. That gives him the peace of God. He understands where all of his blessings and prosperity has come from. And now he can have peace with other people, including his brother, that he has wronged. And there's this beautiful moment of reconciliation, because I want you to know this: reconciliation is the heart of God. It is the reason why in the letter to the church at Corinth, Paul says that I have given you now. You have been reconciled to God, and now I've given you the ministry of reconciliation to help other people reconcile to God, but also to reconcile to each other. You see, this is the heart of God. This is the ministry of God, and this is our ministry for those of us who follow Jesus. It is we are reconciled to God, and therefore we can be reconciled to others, and then we can help others be reconciled to God and be reconciled to others. Reconciliation is at the heart of God. It is at the heart of our Father, and it is at the heart of the gospel. And you can't be reconciled unless you are willing to forgive. And when you realize what God is forgiving you from and for and to, then you can accept his forgiveness, but then you can also forgive other people. This is the reason I think that Jacob says here that when I saw Esau's face, I've seen your face, and it is like seeing God's face. Do you know why? Because seeing Esau's face, he saw a face of forgiveness. He saw a face of reconciliation, and it was like looking at God in the face, because God's heart is forgiveness. God's heart is reconciliation. So my first question for you is, do you need to be reconciled to God? And if you have been reconciled to God, is there anyone you need to forgive or ask forgiveness from and be reconciled with? What does that look like in your life? And then at the end of Genesis 33, we see an issue that I believe could potentially bring consequences later down the road. Because one of the things we understand is it's good for the people of God to be separated from some of these other people, because they worship all of these other gods, and they don't want to intermingle with people who worship other gods, because it could draw them away from worshiping Yahweh. And at the end of Genesis 33, after Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely at Shechem in the land of Canaan and camped in front of the city. I think he's getting too close to the Canaanite country. I think he's getting too close to people who don't follow God, and we have to be careful. When we position ourselves too close to people who don't follow God, it can lead to devastating consequences. Not only that, he had made a vow to God that he was going to return to Bethel, but he doesn't. He settles here in Shechem, and instead of returning to Bethel and worshiping God and setting him an altar there, he settles in somewhere that he didn't promise God. He doesn't fulfill his vow, and he sets up an altar in Shechem and tries to proclaim that place now belongs to Yahweh. But as believers, we have to be careful. We have to be careful where we do life, who we do life around, how close we get to certain people, because it can lead to devastating consequences. And I think that's what we're going to see happen in Genesis 34. We'll see you next week.